Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon John. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we've got a lot to talk about. Whether you are premature reporting or whether you are, yeah, I went there. Whether you are,
You wasted no time in going there. Sheesh.
it's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. No, it's all good and fun, right? We've all been there before, right? Yeah, Skip Johnson, Darius Afalava commitment. There's 3 commits potentially, announcements, whatever you want to call it, coming up on July 1st. We'll discuss that. Obviously, we got a hint of a really cool podcast coming up to celebrate the indoctrination into the SEC. That will be dropping on Monday. We'll get more into that. We can tell what that is at the end of the podcast, I believe, right? Like, do you want to hint to that, or do you want to just leave that for the masses to wonder?
We can leave that for the end. And by the way, for those that are regular listeners, if I sound different,
He looks awful.
Yeah. I got sick coming back from Jacksonville earlier this week. And I'm in pretty rough shape. Hopefully, it doesn't sound like I'm in too terribly rough shape. I realize I probably sound different, but I'm going to power through, hurt, not injured. I'm going to get through this podcast for you all.
There you go. Parker Thune, always here for the consumer.
Brandon Drum on vacay.
Vacay, as
on
usual.
The Outer Banks.
No, just kidding. Yeah, I am on vacation. We don't stop. We still power through. We still do our thing, no matter where we're at in the world. I'm actually between one firm, Zach Galifianakis type. Man, that's a hard word to say.
Only one fern, not
only
two.
one fern, not between two, only one. And if you know what that is, you know. It's a funny little skit that he always used to do with interviews. All right.
This is Brandon Drum, and this is adjacent to one fern.
Adjacent to one fern. There you go. Well, behind us is the ocean. Like if I opened up right here, you could see the ocean. You got to start, but in the light, you can see it. It's literally 10 feet away. I'll say this, guys. There is no dead time if you cover the University of Oklahoma. It is the gift that keeps on giving. If you're an OU fan and you like news, the University of Oklahoma Athletic Department delivers, and they deliver in tenfold, whether it's OU football, whether it's baseball, which is right now, softball. There's softball news that's been going on. There is a lot to unravel just in the last, 36 hours? 72 hours. Like it's been a whirlwind of news. And I think we would have started with the Darius Afalava, obviously, because I was such a big get for Bill Bedenbaugh. But you got to go with Skip Johnson and Joe C. Just laying it all out there. I call him Big D Joe because he always comes through for everybody, right? Just put it all out there on the table. See how big. They always tell you to see how big your balls are whenever you make a pick, Parker. Joe told everybody, you're not messing with us. Hey, Trev Alberts, back up. You don't want to compare because you can't. And Skip stuck around for the University of Oklahoma.
That was an interesting angle on this
very, very crude angle, but at the same time, very true.
I really hadn't considered it in those terms, but yeah, Skip Johnson staying at the University of Oklahoma. And look, at 57 years old, if indeed he's getting more money, getting an extension, you would figure that Skip Johnson is going to be an OU lifer. I know he's got a nice house out in Blanchard. I know he loves him some hunting and some fishing. Oklahoma is a good place to do all those things. He's going to get his facility upgrades in time. The program will be invested in, and especially after this whole ordeal, in which we know he wasn't offered the job at Texas A&M, but there was a conversation that ensued. Correct. He did an interview, and then he had his annual contract meeting with Joe Castiglione, and I think what Skip's willingness to even talk to Texas A&M will I think what that indicates to the OU administration is, okay, we need to be proactive in making sure that we accommodate Skip as
Mhm.
best we can. And granted, baseball at the University of Oklahoma right now, like this is the harsh reality, Brandon. It's no higher than third on the pecking order. Football and softball, at least in the immediate future, are always going to be 1-2. But I think with everything that's gone on over the last 48, 72 hours, the interview with Texas A&M, followed very closely by the contract meeting, and now news that Skip is going to get a raise, going to get an extension.
Mm.
What this demonstrates is that Josie and those involved in the administration within the Oklahoma athletic department are serious about making sure that they are competitive in baseball, because you don't want to be an also ran in the sport of baseball in the SEC conference. Baseball is a big, big deal in the SEC. Um, so as Oklahoma makes the transition to that conference, they're going to need to be ready, and they will be ready from a competitive standpoint. So I think that it's an acknowledgement that, hey, this is a sport where we can't afford to fall behind. We need to be in ship shape as we get
Mhm.
ready for SEC competition. And there's also an acknowledgement there, Brandon, that, hey, Skip Johnson is the guy to spearhead these efforts. He's been here for 7 years, been to 4 NCAA regionals, taken Oklahoma to the cusp of a national title. Obviously, they lost that championship series to Ole Miss back in 2022. But if it ain't broke, don't break it.
Mm.
And Oklahoma, it would appear, is committed to making sure that happens in the sport of baseball.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it. I think everybody and myself included kept saying, "Well, baseball's such a big deal." You said it just now. Baseball is such a big deal in the SEC, and it is. It is a big deal. You go to those stadiums. You go to LSU. You go to Mississippi State. You go to Arkansas, even Texas A&M, right? And those stadiums they're legit. They're holding, I think, 7,000, 8,000 people, right? And they're then they sell it out. Like you've got at Mississippi State, they have a right field and center field literally dedicated to people that bring their RVs up there and cook out and tailgate. And they built stands on top of little RV. You know, you've seen it. It's a different world. But I think that's in every sport of the SEC, right? Like I think this was a wake up call for Oklahoma that yes, you have to invest in Oklahoma in football, right? You've got to invest in the NIL of football. You've got to invest with softball, right? But what they've also got to do is they got to do it in basketball, right? And you see the arena that they're trying to improve, right? And Norman, if that ever takes place, if Norman will ever allow that to take place, that would be great. Then you've got we've already seen the renditions, right, of Eldell Mitchell Park and the expansion and everything that's been going on 3 years now, Parker, right? That they've talked about it. They just haven't had the funding for it. At some point, you got to do it. You got to do it. Oklahoma has become so good at baseball over the last 4 years that now it's to the point, okay, well, you've played for the national title. You almost made it to the College World Series this year. You won the Big 12. Your last year there, right? You've done every Skip Johnson did everything for you that he probably could with the arsenal and the tools that were given to him. Now you've got to ramp it up. And I think if you ramp it up, yes, the SEC is going to be tougher. The Big 12 is no slouch in baseball, but it's not the SEC. And so you're going to have to ramp that up. You're going to have to get better and better and better with that. And I think the more that you do and the more you invest, the better that program's obviously going to be. It isn't one of those, if you build it, they will come. It's already there. Now I think you've got to give him extra tools to take it over the top, whether that's indoor batting cages, bigger indoor batting cages, indoor pitching, whether that's a bigger capacity for baseball. Because I think Parker, would you agree with this? that the I guess in the Big 12 was softball was just so good, right? Like Oklahoma State, Texas, you just had really good teams. Baylor was good at times. TCU was good at times. Like you've had teams that were good, and not just good, really good in the Big 12. But the SEC is like super, super deep in softball. With baseball, and I'm talking about attendance here, Arkansas, LSU, Mississippi State, Alabama, Auburn's been good at baseball. Obviously, Texas is going to come along. But in Tennessee, they just won the national title. When those teams start rolling in for a 3-game series, the games are going to be bigger. The attendance is going to be larger. Like the product's going to be better on the field, not just for Oklahoma, but the opposing product, which makes you want to go watch, right? Do you see? I think the fans are going to be more invested, is what I'm saying, just because of that. They're going to have more interest, and I think this woke the fans up too, a little bit.
No, it did. And again, obviously things didn't get all that far down the road
Right?
between Skip and Texas A&M, but even just the thought, the very concept of losing your head baseball coach to an institution that's willing to invest more in the sport of I mean, you saw the reaction on Twitter,
Yeah, that's
Brandon.
freaking out.
People were fuming at the very prospect of that even coming to fruition. And look, if Texas A&M had followed through with an offer to Skip Johnson and been able to pay what they are purportedly able and willing to pay in the realm of an annual salary to their head baseball coach, I could not have faulted the guy for leaving.
No,
Brandon. No, because again, purportedly A&M is willing to pay more than 4 times what Skip is making now as of last check, as OU's head baseball coach to go coach at Texas A&M. So look, Brandon, it doesn't much matter who I am or who I represent. If I come to you with an offer to quadruple your salary, you're going to be coming to work for me. So Skip, and look, the great thing about Skip is again, like he's a very simple man. He's content with his life in Oklahoma and everything that he has established here in his 8 years. Because you got to think, 7 years on staff, he was an assistant for Pete Hughes for 1 year prior to assuming the head coaching role. But it's not all about money for Skip. But this is the same conversation that we have with regard to NIL and recruiting all the time. Everybody has that
price.
price, right? Maybe you can't exactly quote what that price is, but if somebody came to me and offered to up my salary by $20,000, okay, I'm intrigued, but it's probably going to matter a little, or it's still going to matter as to what the exact
Yeah.
circumstances are, like everything that I'm stepping into beyond just the money aspect of things. Like for a salary raise that is uh granted substantial but not life-changing, there's going to be more that I take into consideration. But again, somebody offers to quadruple your salary and they're not there to stab you in the back or hang you out to dry. You're going to take that offer in general. And so that could not have faulted Skip if push had come to shove and A&M had made him an offer and he'd said, you know what, I'm willing to bite the bullet and go coach in College Station.
Yeah.
But fortunately for Oklahoma fans and especially those folks that are baseball diehards, because I know again it's kind of a fair weather fandom sport in Oklahoma circles where when they're doing well, people show up. When they're not doing well, people don't really show up.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like basketball in that regard. But you got quite a few Oklahoma baseball diehards out there. For those folks in particular, it is very refreshing news that the Oklahoma administration has done everything they needed to do to make sure that Skip Johnson is not going anywhere and that he is going to oversee the OU baseball program's transition into the SEC.
I think first and foremost, you got to give it up to Travis Davidson, right? Our guy, Travis Davidson, he's on OU Insider. He works for KREF. He's he's one of our colleagues at OU Insider. He does a lot of work with us because he's one of our good friends. He brought it to our board, Parker. Like, hey, like I know that TexAgs was the first to report that there was a meeting between Skip Johnson and Texas A&M, but
Texags
Travis,
will generally be the first to report anything that
yes,
happens at the
anything, yes.
administrative level at Texas A&M. So,
Well, if you go look at Trev Hours follows, the only reporting company that he follows is TexAgs and Billy Lucci. So that's all you gonna need to know. But
well, he doesn't
Travis was
follow
able
Husker
to.
Online anymore.
Well, he probably does, but I just saw that when I was sifting through his follows. So I Travis Davidson obviously was able to confirm it, and then you reached out to me, and I had to make a few phone calls, instantly with regard to this, and this is why I made the joke, premature, whatever, but it's happened to everybody before. It is what it is, right? Um, Literally, if you go to OU Insider VIP, you can read the quotes that I had up there. Is like Skip does not want to leave. He is loyal. Like he's had his chances to go places. And I made the joke to that source just for everybody's sake that you all understand. I made the joke, but was serious when I asked the question, right? I said, so he's loyal, like, Jim Schlossnagel loyal or actually loyal? And he said, no, sir, law, seriously loyal. Like he does not want to leave. And then throughout, like as the breaking news, Skip Johnson's expected to take the Texas A&M job. Of course, we had to reach out, and
And it was such a weird deal at that point
it
because,
was.
well, it became very clear very quickly that there was just not a lot of substance to that.
Oh, they
Because,
were mad that my source was like, "What is going on? Like
yeah,
this is."
reaching out to people on the OU side, they were like, that's not coming from us. And then reaching out to people on the Texas A&M side, they're like, no, we
Yeah,
met with
and they were almost
A&M, but
irritated.
there's
Like this is
nothing.
becoming an annoyance at this point. And I mean, it happens, I guess, but yeah, Parker, it that was a weird deal. And then obviously today we're recording this on a Saturday evening. Um, as I'm driving, I got a call. Essentially, it was like, look, they've had a couple meetings. Things are starting to move in a direction of contractual talk now. Like, so it was become solidified. So I went on the board and said, look, I'm not hearing anything different than I heard yesterday. Like, it is moving and like nothing has changed yet because obviously until the ink's dry, you can't really say yes or no. Um, Kendall for D1
Rogers.
base, Kendall Rogers for D1 baseball. Within like an hour and a half of that phone call that I got, boom, put up there. He's staying. So, I mean, and we're not trying to pat her on back, but we're just literally saying like it never got to the extent of drama that some were trying to portray it as publicly. It just didn't. If you're on OU Insider VIP, you saw it. I know there was another site out there that's one of our competitors that I know did a really good job at reporting about this because I saw it on Twitter. So, like, I mean, well, I'll give credit where credit's due. I mean, Eddie Radonjic did a good job, Parker, like he did. He was,
Yeah.
I saw George
And
regurgitating a lot of his stuff on Twitter. So,
and Josh
like,
Calloway at 24/7,
and
same
Josh
thing. Like
Calloway 24/7, like the other guys did a really good job. There was an outcast that made it very
a
dramatic,
maverick, if you will.
if you will, made it
Maverick
dramatic.
is probably a better word.
And it wasn't like that at all. Like, it wasn't this back and forth, like, I'm leaving. No, I'm not. Blah, blah. One, he was never offered the job to leave. Two, when they came in to talk, first it was just kind of to settle the waters. The second conversation, second meeting, Parker, as you know, was to start talking logistics for the future for the baseball program and contracts. And then obviously today it was to really dive into the contracts. So, like, it never really, like, Joe C, Skip, Joe Haraz had that thing under control the whole time. But Skip got their attention. That meeting did exactly what it was supposed to do. right?
Yeah, I mean, look, regardless of whether or not you have intentions to leave,
Yeah.
if you want concessions made for your program and some additional leeway given for upgrades and NIL improvements and all that type of stuff, interview with another program,
Particularly a program is good. They just played for the
especially a
national title.
program that is well, especially a program that is as pissed off
Yeah.
as Texas A&M right now. And when you are pissed off with money to spend, that's where things get dangerous.
They are the baseball version of the University of Oklahoma after Muleshoe left. And if everybody remembers correctly, yes, they got Brent Venables, and they didn't really pay a high price for Brent Venables in terms of college coaches, right? But a lot of things that they instantly, the second Brent Venables was hired, they redid the whole interior of the Switzer Center so that they could add more support staff, right? And they've added 75 new members, right? Something to that extent. There was over 100 people on staff now for the football program. And then they jumped into the NIL portion of it the very next year. And now things are moving in a direction that you wanted to move into. So if you're an OU fan, that's where you hope this goes with the baseball part. Um, Moving on to another topic, Parker, a
Let's
topic
do
that
it.
a very big pickup for the University of Oklahoma. Obviously, rivals 250 offensive lineman Darius Afalava was down to the Utah Utes and the University of Oklahoma. And this wasn't a done deal. Like what people need to understand,
No,
Parker was out in front of this.
this got tense.
It got tense.
This got
It got
real
tense.
tense.
I'll let you go. Go. You talk.
Well, I'll say this. First and foremost, what a phenomenal recruiting win this is for Bill Bedenbaugh, because it is not often that you can get in the game this late for a legit blue chip top 250 stud, number one player in the state of Utah, a guy of Darius Afalava's caliber. It is not that often that you can get in the game this late and even make a legit run at the kid, let alone land him, because Oklahoma offered Afalava on April 20th at the spring game. It was his very first visit to Norman. He came to campus for the spring game, picked up the offer. At that point, Brandon, I mean, we're not talking about BYU and Boise State that want this kid. He had an offer from LSU and had
Mhm.
been courted by LSU for a long, long time. He'd been courted by Tennessee for a long, long time. He had an offer from Michigan. He had an offer from Oregon. He had offers from USC and Texas A&M and Michigan State and UCLA. And obviously Washington and Utah were two more schools that he ended up OV in. He had a ton of high-end P4 interest. And yet, the culture at Oklahoma and the unique dynamic of the program, especially as it pertains to the sole mission and how they develop young men off the field, instantly appealed to Afalava and his family. They're a tight-knit family. He's got four younger brothers. So this is a family decision that he and his folks had to go ahead and make. And Oklahoma, getting him on campus on April 20th, getting to showcase some of the things that they were able to showcase to him, really did make a strong impression early on in this process and enabled, I say early on in this process, early on as it was relevant to Oklahoma. This process had already been ongoing for quite some time. But even though Oklahoma was so late to the game, they made such a fast impression with him and his family that they agreed to OV. And at that point, Brandon, it became very clear, okay, he's OV in there. Oklahoma's a serious consideration. They're not just an also ran. They're not just a program that he's going to say nice things about a couple of times, and then that'll be that, and he'll be on his merry way committing to some other program. Oklahoma wanted Afalava. They pushed for Afalava. And as he tells it, Bill Bedenbaugh had been building that relationship with him since the winter. So it had been a few months even before he picked up the offer that Oklahoma had kind of been kicking the tires. But after he OV'd to Utah on June 4th and Oklahoma on June 7th, in the immediate aftermath of the OU official visit, he canceled his OV to LSU.
Mm-hmm.
He took one more to Washington. The instant feedback I got off that Washington visit was he's not going to Washington. That did not go well.
Yeah.
It's going to be Oklahoma or it's going to be Utah, which is kind of already what the trend was going into that Washington visit. You did kind of worry, okay, it's a program that just played for a national championship, first year head coach and Jed Fish. They got some juice, they got some buzz there. Maybe they can make the last impression really count. But no, that Washington visit came and went, and it was still OU Utah. And what I thought was really, really interesting was I was I was talking to Darius. I was on the phone with him earlier in the week prior to his announcement and prior even to his decision. He was still going back and forth between Oklahoma and Utah in his own mind. And I thought it was really interesting to hear him lay it all out. Obviously, all the reasons he had to love Oklahoma were laid out in the commitment interview that we did with him over at OUinsider.com. But it was really interesting to hear him talk about Utah because they'd been recruiting him since his sophomore year. They were his second scholarship offer ever. So those relationships went back a long, long way. And it
Mhm.
was super intriguing to hear him say, and I'm not directly quoting him, I'm paraphrasing, but what he said amounted to on my OV to Utah, if it were any other school than Utah, I probably would have committed on the spot. He said, but for me, being close to home doesn't have a ton of appeal. I feel like I need to spread my wings, experience something new, challenge myself. And that was kind of where his head was at going into the final conversations with him and his family. And so at that point, even then, you sense that it could have gone either way. Are they going to sit down and they're going to decide, okay, yeah, you need to spread your wings? Or are they going to say, okay, if Utah checks every box except for the fact that they're close to home, well, then that's a pretty that's not something that should hold you back from being a Ute if that's the only apprehension you have about playing football there. So there was still a lot of uncertainty there, even from the OU side. In 24 hours prior to the decision, there was uncertainty as to whether or not they were going to wind up with Darius Afalava's commitment. But in the end, he sat down, hammered things out with his parents, with his family, and Oklahoma was the decision that they arrived at. He's the
Yeah.
third commitment of this 2025 cycle for Oklahoma, the highest ranked of the three for now. I figure Ryan Foje will be higher ranked than him by the end of the cycle, simply because uh, Foje is, I think most understand, he's a fast riser in the sense that I think us at Rivals, we haven't even really caught up to where Foje's stock actually is yet.
Yeah.
He'll
Nope.
probably
We
be a
haven't.
top 100, top 150 player on our service as well as the others by the end of the cycle. But Afalava for us is a top 250 player in the nation. Again, number one player in the state of Utah. And that's a school that Oklahoma hasn't cracked yet in the Venables era, Brandon. They got
Yeah.
close with Cecilia Kana, couldn't seal the deal. They got close with Easton Baker. He committed to Illinois
Mhm.
completely out of left field in that regard. But their first commitment from the Beehive State of the Venables era comes from the number one player in the state in the class of 2024 in Darius Afalava. It's him, Ryan Foje, and Owen Hollenbeck in the offensive line class as of now. And the Sooners hope to add Lamont Rogers and or Michael Fasusi and or Andrew Babalola to
No
this
speak
haul.
English. No speak English. Um, so one that awful lot, I was a huge get. You said it, Bill Beanbo, huge get. Another look, his interior offensive line is set. It's set now. I I don't want to get people overly excited here, but I'm going to. Not my intentions, but it is what it is because it's hard not to be overly excited when you hear what I'm about to say. I never thought that Oklahoma would be able to not just land one offensive tackle, but potentially two in this class. Much like Parker, I've felt that Fasusi, because of Texas's lack of options, I guess the only way to put it, but that's not even the right way to put it, to be honest, because you don't just go after Fasusi because of lack of options, but they generally have a lack of options at offensive tackle. It's Fasusi or bust for them at offensive tackle. I've contended for the last month that Oklahoma was a leader for Rodgers, right? I
Yes.
can still contend. We were out in front of that. I will pat my own back on that one, and I'll do it with pride because I was out in front of that one long before everybody else. Everybody else was still here in Missouri and A&M, and I'm not riding those two off with him by any means. And I think Florida State's in there more so than I thought they were going to be. But I just like how this thing's trending. I think the one thing that could really screw this up for Oklahoma with Lamont Rodgers is the fact that Markel Ford, 2026 Rivals 250 safety from Mesquite Horn, his teammate, decided to commit to A&M, but he's taking a visit to OU at the end of this month. So take that for what it is and for what it's worth. I know Markel Ford's mother, the safety, 4-star 2026 safety, loves Texas A&M. Markel loves that staff. And that could have could be a domino or just a puzzle piece to Lamont Rodgers' commitment, but I don't think it's enough to make OU fans nervous at this point. So you have the momentum with Darius Afalava. If you can somehow, reel in Lamont Rodgers between now and July 8th, 9th, and I'm probably being a little generous on the date right now, so it could come earlier. That would be huge. Now you're cooking because you got Sean Hutton, which is a teammate of Michael Fasusi, right? And his best friend. And his other best friend just so happens to be who, Parker? Lamont Rodgers.
Babbel is a proud sponsor of OU Insider and the Under the Visor podcast. The best way to learn a language is immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Look, if you're like me, you probably took a few years of Spanish or some other foreign language growing up, and everything went in one ear and out the other. You didn't really learn anything applicable to everyday life. But Babbel's convenient courses have helped me learn real-life conversation skills in a different language. It's so easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants, etc., without having to consult language apps while on vacation. Now, here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/OU Insider. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/OU Insider, spelled BABBEL.com/OU Insider. Rules and restrictions may apply. Mando is a proud sponsor of OU Insider. My guys, you ever lift a little too hard or just forget to apply your daily deodorant and get hit by a truckload of BO from all directions? Or does that 3-in-1 shampoo leave you needing a second shower just a few hours after the first? Well, from the founders of Lumi, Mando Whole Body Deodorant is helping men conquer their odor in a brand new way. Formulated with mandelic acid, Mando has long-lasting 72-hour odor control that actually stops odor before it starts. Mando also boasts cologne-quality scents, including their bestseller, Bourbon Leather. Brandon and I both love it. We take a Bourbon Leather body wash wherever we go on the road in a travel size. It's a game changer. It was for us. It will be for you. We've got a special offer for you as well. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code and link. So use code INSIDER at shopmando.com, SHOPMANDO.com. Again, To help you get hooked on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market, you can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code INSIDER at shopmando.com. SHOPMANDO.com. It's time to smell better naked. Your partner will thank you.
Yeah, you can totally tell you're sick. Like you're just.
Dude, I'm doing my best.
I
Like
know,
I'll
I
be
know. You
honest,
are, you are,
I
you
kind of
are.
have a brain fog right now. It's a struggle to even maintain a train of thought.
Now, I
It's
asked
just,
you who one of his other best friends were, and you were like,
and I was just like, and of
"Who
course I
is
know
it?
the answer, but I'm just sitting here
Who
like,
is it?
it'll come
Who
to
is this
me.
person?"
It'll come to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is Lamont Rogers, and so Sean Hutton, Lamont Rogers. You have the momentum of obviously Darius Afalava. You have the potential momentum of everything that happens on July 1st, if it works out like we think it's going to work, right? And we're going to get into that in just a second.
Yes.
If all that takes place, and then on July 6th, Amarian Robinson decides to go to the University of Oklahoma, like we have said.
Ooh.
Ooh, what?
I'm the possibilities, man.
Okay.
This has the potential to be an enormous week for Oklahoma on the
It
recruiting
does.
trail.
It does. And that's what we're getting at. I am not going to put in a pick for Marion Robinson. I'm not. There are reasons why, and it's not to say that I'm so I can say, oh, if he didn't go there, I didn't put a pick in. No, you right here from my mouth to your ears, whatever platform you're listening on. This is the pick. I'm picking Amarian Robinson to choose Oklahoma. I am. That's my pick. But I'm not putting in a future cast. I'm not doing it for reasons that I can dive into later on. I like OU's chances right now. I think Oklahoma's done a really good job, and I think they're going to continue to do a good job. So if that happens, Parker, all in the next 10 days, and I'm not sitting here saying that's when Lamont Rogers he's going to commit within the next 10 days. My gut says it can happen in the next 10 to 12 days. Right? You have the same sources I have.
That is
So,
correct. And I think you said for a while, Brandon, because I recall having this conversation on a podcast probably sometime in May, honestly, that
he wanted to do late June, early July. There
exactly
was
that a decision
always,
was going to come
always a
pretty
timeline.
soon after official visits. So
Yep.
it's about that time, man. We're getting down to when you would expect a decision any day now from Lamont Rogers.
I'm not going to say or say Fasusi joins OU's class, but if that all takes place, it is going to be hard for Michael Fasusi to say no, particularly because Oklahoma is going to play the NIL game. Now, they're not going to play it the way Texas A&M play or Texas plays it, right? They're not.
Guys, imagine the triumph, Brandon. Imagine the triumph if Lamont Rogers and Michael Fasusi were to both wind up in Oklahoma's class in the coming days / weeks after Darius Afalava just jumped on board. Because it feels like this happens every year, Brandon, in that we, the insiders, and the fan base as well, because they listen to us, feels like we almost and it's justifiable because it's what we hear, like it's the truth of what we hear from sources that would know about these specific
And not
situations. But it
OU
feels like,
side. It's
yeah,
not
it
OU
feels
side.
like every single summer there's that point at which we're sitting here going, oh man, Oklahoma has a chance to do some real damage. And then there's always something that goes awry, man.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, it doesn't like it never all goes awry.
No, because
You
you
didn't
can't when you
get
have
you didn't
classes
get
they've had,
Williams
right?
Winery last year, but you got David Stone. You couldn't overcome Missouri, but you overcame Miami. So
And you
it
got Jaden
doesn't all
Jackson
go
too.
awry. But still, like, could you have your cake and eat it too with this offensive line group in the
It's
2025
possible.
class? It like
It's
it
possible.
is a possibility, and I don't
And it's
want
a
to.
better possibility than we thought it was going to be 3 weeks ago, right? Like it's very much changed. And let me ask you, Parker. if I say there is a 40% chance that Fasusi is in OU's class, is that too high to you?
No, I think that's just right.
Hmm.
I think that's just right. I don't favor Oklahoma yet, and I guess part of the reason I don't favor Oklahoma is because I favor them for Rodgers, and it feels like Rodgers and Fasusi is too much of a good thing, and you just can
I
never have
totally agree.
you can't have too much of a good thing, is what we've learned in recent years. And so, yeah, maybe it's jaded, maybe it's cynical, but I'm gonna have to see it to believe it. You got
Hmm.
Afalava, you got Foje, you got Hollenbeck. This thing all crash. If this all comes crashing to the ground for Bill Bedenbaugh, he's still got really good pieces. But the prospect of landing one or both of Rodgers and Fasusi to top this off, man, and Babalola, I know it's such a wild card, but we're using the mix there too.
So
Ugh.
if OU doesn't get Rogers, so right now I still think Oklahoma's in a really good position, and that would be my pick, right? And again, much like Marion Robinson, I'm not going to put in a future cast for Rogers. There are reasons. Parker, I've talked to you about this behind the scenes. The phone call that I got was specifically asked, please do not put in pick, but this is what we're feeling at this time, right? When it comes to Lamont Rogers. So whatever. Um, if it's not Oklahoma, who do you think it is between A&M, Missouri, and Florida State? You're going to say Missouri, I bet.
I would probably say Missouri. Yeah.
I would say A&M. I don't think he goes that far away from his siblings and his mom. I just don't. Maybe I'm giving the family aspect too much credit, but I just don't. Um,
And are we underselling how much of an
well, you
NIL
still have Markel Ford too. That's
behemoth?
the other thing.
Yeah, and are we underselling how much of an NIL behemoth Texas A&M is when you really think about it? Because
Mhm.
Missouri has kind of built that reputation ever since the Williams Winery recruitment, but A&M was the OG, man.
They
They were
are.
throwing
Yeah.
out big money before anybody else was throwing out big money in the NIL era.
Yep. So speaking of July 1st, which is going to be the initial, well, Darius Afalava was the initial kickoff of a potential just behemoth 10 days for the University of Oklahoma, potentially a behemoth 10 days. July 1st, you got a four-star defensive end, Smith Orogbo, right?
That is correct.
You have rivals 100 or 150 wide
100.
receiver. Okay. Okay.
He's the number 69 player in the nation.
Yes. There you go.
Which, if he were to jump on board with Oklahoma, Cortez Mills would actually be Oklahoma's highest ranked commit.
Which is weird, right? For now, he'd be the
To
highest
think
ranked
that they
commit
have
for
that
now.
much talent in the class, and yet nobody ranked higher than number
It's
69.
weird, right?
So
But
Cortez Mills is also announcing on July 1st. And then the third
mhm,
one is Harbor City, California, Narbonne High School linebacker Mark Ihenichor, a
mhm,
high school teammate of one
good
Jaden
one.
O'Neal.
Correct. Does OU go 3 for 3? Do they go 2 for 3? Do they go one for 3? What's your guess right
I'll
now?
be candid right now,
I
Brandon.
say 2 for 3.
This will drop on a Sunday morning. As of this Sunday morning, I don't know. And I don't think, like, to the best of my knowledge, OU doesn't know what's going to happen with Arogbo and Ihenichor. With Arogbo, it is an OU-UT battle. Red River
Texas. Yep.
Showdown.
Yep.
Is it OU or is it Texas? Kid hasn't really tipped his hand yet. And more than that, he hasn't informed the coaching staffs one way or another. Ihenichor is Oklahoma and SMU. That's the battle. As we sit here, 24, 36 hours from the decisions from these guys, the one I feel the most confident in is the highest ranked of the three, and that is
Mhm.
Cortez Mills, the four-star wideout from Homestead, Florida. Emmett Jones, man, he doesn't run out of magic.
No, and the Clemson insiders are waving the white flag too right now. Like I was perusing their boards today, just trying to see because you start to see the picture, right? I made that tweet like, oh, welcome to the prediction party. Uh so I can't remember how I worded it, something like industry wide prediction party, and like kind of showed how everybody's starting to put picks in for the University of Oklahoma for Cortez Mills. Now, his relationship obviously with Marcus Harris is huge. Marcus Harris is one of the highest ranked players on OU's commitment list as well.
Yep.
They got to hang out at the Rivals camp, and you when you talk to people at the Rivals camp, like we or 5-star challenge, the Rivals 5-star challenge, we continued to gather that Oklahoma was just doing some damage on a few guys. Like their recruits, whether it was Trent Wilson, Marcus Harris, trying to think who else was there that was commit. They were the only two commits, right? Am I missing somebody off the top of my head here?
No, it's just those two.
It's just those two, but there was a horde of OU targets that were there. And we were down in the lobby. And at one point, Parker, you were waiting on food. I was actually going to get my Uber Eats food, and you were typing. And I stopped to talk to you, but then this horde of players comes down the lobby. Trent Wilson, Marcus Harris, Cortez Mills, Marion Robinson, Christian
Ooh,
Jones are all together.
what's the common denominator there? Boy, I wonder. Hang on, keep telling this story while I go blow my nose,
So yeah,
Brandon.
so we were
I'm dying.
you're good. So and we just kind of joked and turned. I turned to Marion Robinson. I said, "Bro, what are y'all doing?" He's like, "Man, I don't even know." I goes, "I guess I'm just gonna go back up to my room." So and anybody who knows Marion Robinson, that's him. He's gonna be the loner out of the group. There are reasons why that is the case, personality wise, just kind of his upbringing. And again, that goes in line with something that after he announces to Oregon, Oklahoma, Arkansas, no matter what, he's kind of giving me the green light to tell his story, but I'm not going to tell it until after that because he doesn't want his story to overshadow his commitment. So, and again, it is a very inspirational, sad, but yet really cool story at the same time. If you see what's going on with him now in his life, like even he, and this is kind of a hint, even he will sit there and say, I can't believe I'm making it out. And that is something that right there, you're going to think, like, get out of what? And I want y'all to think. That way you keep that in your head when it comes time for me to tell the story. It is an amazing story, heartbreaking. Like I always get goosebumps every time I think about it, Parker. Like it's such a freaking awesome story. Anyways, so yeah, they were all down in the lobby together, going to get food and then turn back around after they got their stuff and they go back upstairs. But I thought that was interesting that there was like this group of Oklahoma kids as far as offers go, right? 2 commits and a bunch of offers, and they're all hanging out with each other. Now, granted, I will say that Marcus Harris and Trent Wilson, Trent is the most serious business like, almost scary type of guy when he's not
He is intense.
super intense. But you want to know what? At the end of the camp, he was joking with us. Like he very much became after he did his bench press and he realized like the competition was over for him. He turned it off like that and became one of the most chill dudes ever. His dad is an amazing guy, by the way. Love talking to him. Decked out in OU gear, guys, for you
Head
OU
to
fans.
toe.
Head to toe OU gear. Walked in like you knew it was Trent Wilson and his dad.
You
His
don't have to
daddy was
wonder.
daddy. He looks like his daddy,
Yep.
and his dad was decked out in OU gear. So, um, Yeah, it was. I thought that was a cool event, but I thought that was pretty. That was pretty wild to see all those guys go to down. And I think I bring the Christian Jones part of that in because I want you to discuss that because
Yeah.
if they don't get Iheanacho, then it's Christian Jones or bust at linebacker, right?
Well, and Christian Jones is a kid that I've been covering for a long, long time because he's been a major P4 prospect since his freshman year of high school. He's held P4 offers since December of 2021. So this
Mm-hmm.
has been a long process for him. He obviously comes from my home territory. I kid you not, Brandon. The church that my father pastors in Omaha is quite literally a stone's throw from Jones High School. I mean, they are not more than
Very cool.
80, 100 feet apart. They share a parking lot. And so to shoot, I went to that. I went to his high school's homecoming when I was a junior. Um, and so that is, I mean, I don't think he started out at a different school. He played his freshman year at Burke High School, then he transferred to West Side to follow his coach. But he is, I mean, at pretty much any time I go back to Omaha, I'll make it a point to go check in with Christian Jones, see how he's doing. And there's always, from my perspective, been a feeling that Oklahoma could be a fit for him if, when push comes to shove, the Sooners actually push for his pledge.
Mm-hmm.
That was always the hangup for me is I know Christian Jones likes Oklahoma. How much does Oklahoma like Christian Jones? And it didn't really help when communication kind of waned for a little bit when Ted Roof departed and Zach Alley took over. Even before Roof was out the door, Jones had already set his official visit for the Champion Barbecue. That OV was set in January.
Wow.
And so, and it was the very first OV he had set. And so at that point, like, okay, like things are like, this is legit. This is real. This could actually happen. And then Roof steps down. Zach Alley's the new linebackers coach. And there was a period of time where Jones and Oklahoma weren't communicating as much. But in the later stage of the spring, contact period rolls around and Allie went up to Omaha to check in with Christian Jones, watch one of his track meets. They got to talking more than they had in the days and weeks prior, and he ends up re-establishing those official visit plans for June 21st to the 23rd. And I'm willing to issue this prediction right now, Brandon, with a contingency, I suppose. It's not a full-fledged prediction, but I'd be willing to bet that if the Sooners do not get Marky Hennichor on Monday, I think they will get Christian Jones later on down the line.
Hmm. There
They're
you go.
battling Nebraska and Auburn. Those are the two schools.
He's taking a visit to Miami, right?
Miami's 1 foot in, 1 foot. Like they haven't offered him. They're getting him on a visit, but they haven't offered him.
Man,
So
when they see him in person, I think they will offer though.
how
He
how
is a
real how
good
real
looking
is
dude.
Miami's interest there? And moreover, is well, and if he were to pick up that offer from Miami in late July, would Brent Venables want to stick it to Miami because he can't have Elijah Melendez? That's the other angle.
Yeah. I
Um,
think Melendez is the first time that I can remember in since BV became the head coach that Miami won a head to head versus Oklahoma, right? Like,
Ahmad Moten, you remember him?
dude, that was the initial. Okay. So they're like Miami is like 2-12 versus Oklahoma right now. It's not
Yeah,
it's
Cristobal's
not a
gotten
very good
beaten.
percentage.
Yeah, Venables has beaten Cristobal a lot.
The
Not just
Miami
David Stone
fans,
either. Like
oh,
our
they
Mason
hate him.
Thomas, James Nesta was one. Like James Nesta was Miami bound until Oklahoma got involved.
Jaden
So
Jackson.
there have been several recruitments where both those schools have gone head to head, whether with each other or with other programs. Uh, but Oklahoma in general has come out on the winning end when pitted against Miami on the recruiting trail in the Venables / Cristobal era because they came in virtually concurrently with one another. They were hired like what a week apart at
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma and Miami respectively. So Yeah, there'll always
Cortez
be that.
Mills potentially down the line. I mean,
Yeah, man. Like,
forget about that one. Nobody really
and
thinks
that's going to be
of Miami.
regarded as
Yeah.
more of an OU win over Clemson than an OU win over
Yeah.
Miami. But there was a time where everybody kind of figured Cortez is going to just wind up at the U. There was a time where that
There
was the case.
was. There was. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, BB's just kind of had his way with
And
Mario Cristobal.
and kind of closing the loop on Christian Jones, Oklahoma. I think there's a lot more familiarity with Oklahoma than there is with Auburn. That's why I would give the Sooners the edge over the Tiger. I don't think he's going to Nebraska unless all his other options dry up. I've felt this way for a long, long time. I've said it time and again. I just don't think he wants to be at Nebraska. Some kids are like that, man. And that's why, I was having a conversation with a source earlier tonight. We were actually talking about Desan Brain. And why, oh, why he would rather go to Oregon or to Tennessee over Oklahoma was the question that this source was posing to me. And we got around to talking about Nate Roberts as well. And, for kids that grow up that close to one specific school, there can be two very different perspectives. Right? On the one hand, that's all you've ever dreamed of. You want to wear that uniform. You want to represent that school. And then there are some kids that want to see something different. It's all they've ever known. And sure, they have an admiration for it. They have a love for it, but they want to write their own story. And that's kind of what happened with Nate Roberts at Washington, Oklahoma, that is, in case I need to clarify that for anyone. But I kind of have gotten the sense for quite some time that it's going to be the same with Christian Jones. He's a Husker legacy, but just have never really felt like the desire is there to stay in the state of Nebraska and be a legend in the Scarlet and Cream. I think a future in the Crimson and Cream is more likely than that at this point. So he loves Zach Alley, loves Brent Venables, loves the culture at Oklahoma. And all of that, all of those factors combined, to me, have helped put Oklahoma in the driver's seat with Christian Jones right now. Does that hold? That's the big question. He wants to commit in late August, early September is kind of the rough timeline right now. So we'll see where that goes. But right now, if you had to ask me where he ends up, I think assuming Marky Hennichor is a pony on Monday, I'll bet you Christian Jones winds up in Oklahoma.
I'm actually trying to reach out to a source that I think will know about Hennichor. So hopefully we'll have something soon. Before we close this out, SEC Media Day, or excuse me, that is SEC Media Day is on the 15th through the 17th. SEC Day, the inaugural, the initiation, the celebration of OU and Texas becoming actual SEC, I guess, competitors, teams within the conference, actually members of the conference, if you will, is Monday, July 1st. And we're going to have all that covered for you guys. I promise you that we've got a lot coming for you guys on OU Insider. We have something really cool. So I'm sure if you have been following anything as far as college football goes, podcasts, videos on YouTube, all of that, since Oklahoma has been said to be heading into the SEC, you've probably followed SEC Mike. You've probably watched that SEC podcast. That's literally what it's called, that SEC podcast. We have a treat for you. SEC Mike joining us July 1st. That will be released. The podcast will be out. He will actually be in Oklahoma as well, doing a lot of stuff, going and checking out Oklahoma City, Norman, all the eateries, doing all that stuff. Make sure you go and you subscribe to his YouTube, subscribe to their Twitter, do everything that you can to follow that. But he is going to be on with us, Parker. We've already recorded this podcast and it is awesome. It is informative. You get the taste of what the SEC's like. I mean, it is for a fan. I think you guys are going to enjoy this more than anything because you're going to get the outsider's perspective, a national guy's perspective. He is on with Feinbaum a lot. He's on Fox Sports a lot. Like he is a guest with a lot of big names because SEC Mike is that guy. So make sure you listen to that podcast if you're really excited about the SEC and what everybody thinks about Oklahoma going in. This podcast coming up on Monday will be for you. So make sure you stay tuned. Having said that, Parker, I mean, it's cool, dude. It's here. Like officially here. And then 14 days later, we're going to be in Dallas at the Omni Hotel just doing SEC Media Days. How surreal is that, dude? Like that's weird to think about.
SEC Media Days in Dallas, Texas. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm excited. I can't tell you how excited I am. I'm excited about it because not only does SEC Media Day at that point, but so is the College Football 25 video game. By the way, those rankings are ass. The offense and defensive rankings are bad. They're bad.
Like objectively, like you don't even need to have a rooting interest to look at them and go, okay, that's bad.
It was awful.
Colorado, Clemson, like
I feel like they're
Memphis.
spoofing us. I feel they're spoofing us. Like they can't be serious, right?
Maybe they are.
The good thing about it is they're going to update. I think is what they're going to do. They're going to update that stuff as the season goes on, because there's zero chance that you should have Colorado be in the top 25 of defense. There's zero chance. What was the other team they had in the top 25 of defense? USC. What? They can't even get defenders to want to come play for them. They're putting out people that nobody else wanted outside of Bear Alexander. Like their 5 stars are gone. What was the kid's name? Jackson, that went to Alabama.
Domani Jackson.
Domani Jackson. Like your dudes are gone. Caleb Williams gone. I think they're gonna have a good offense. I won't begrudge that at all. I think
I don't think their offense is gonna be that good. I'll say.
But I think they're gonna be a top 25 offense. I mean, it's Lincoln Riley. So anyways, I digress. Excited for that week. That week's gonna be awesome. But what's even better is signing up for OU Insider and subscribing to this YouTube, because that's where all the content's gonna be. Right here, right now, OU Insider VIP. Go over to ouinsider.com. Free Rivals screen name right now. You can sign up. It'll be great. $9.95 a month, $99.95 will get you a whole year. We'll get you all the way to June 30th and or July 1st or July 2nd, whenever you're watching this in 2025, if you sign up and you do the whole year. It's worth it. We have had 300 plus signups over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Thank you so much, OU fans. You guys rock. You guys rock. Cannot thank you guys enough. Also, subscribe to this YouTube. Help us get to 16,000 subscribers on this YouTube by September 1st. Would love that. Would be awesome. We're trying to get as big as we can heading into the SEC. So subscribe. It's not just for this podcast. Multiple podcasts, Barry and Mac. You also have the Oklahoma Drill with Brian and Jesse. You have In the Paint with Jesse and Brody. You've got a lot of content with myself and Parker. We've got some cool things coming up for you guys that you guys are going to love. So make sure you're subscribed right here to OU Insider YouTube. All right. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.